sessions have been very enlightening. It seems you're being controlled by your fear. However, I also don't think you're being entirely honest with me. I mean, do you even know the difference between fantasy and reality anymore? I only have 2 more questions for you, and an activity, and then we can end today's session. So first question is, which do you fear more? Is it developers like EA or mobile games? Okay. Do you prefer exclusives or multiplats? Interesting. I'm going to show you a series of games. Now, be entirely honest and let me know which ones scare you the most. Okay? Okay. And this one. Interesting. And these last 2. I know you're afraid. Through all our sessions together, you refuse to acknowledge your fear. But you will. Hello fellow gamers, it's Tsunami, the voice of the Bloopers. I'm here giving you my personal review of Until Dawn. I do things a little bit differently than Zero. I don't break down the game and give each area a score. However, I will give you 2 scores. One that is my personal score. It's something that I go by because I have biases. So certain games in my collection may not be considered good games, but to me, I really like the game personally. So I'm giving you 2 scores on how I feel. One is the actual critic score or the review score, and the other one's going to be my personal score and whether or not I'm adding the game into my collection. And that is how I'm going to do my reviews here forward. So this is my first review of Until Dawn. I'm going to roll right into graphics. Graphics in this game were amazing. Absolutely amazing. When you start talking about the features of the characters, facial movements, the smiles, the laughter, the terror, just the way that all the facial features went together. I mean, I can't say enough about the character movement and facial movement on the characters. It was unbelievable on those graphics. The lighting in the game was amazing. It wasn't too bright, it wasn't flashy. They kept really good with the lighting in the game. The forest and the woods surrounding the mansion house the characters were in was unbelievable. The animals in the game even looked really good. It was really impressive. And the sound from the game really adds into it. The sound is unbelievable. You had wind, you had different things going on in the background. It made you feel like you didn't know if something was there, wasn't there. They did very well with the voice acting. It was crisp, it was clean, it was clear. You could understand what was going on, even though it was a little freaky at times. The sound was very good. It created a very, very enveloping environment. With the graphics and the sound combined, it rolled into the story. The story was 8 characters meeting up a year after the disappearance of one of the characters' sisters. And they ended up on this mountain, it's snowing. It was fantastic. You will love how they put the game together. I was a little disappointed about the ending on the game, and the only reason why I was disappointed was because it felt like it had a Mass Effect ending. It was great all the way through. It made me want to play it. It made me want to see what happened next with the characters. At the end, it felt kind of lackluster. It didn't complete the story for me at the end. The gameplay was really smooth. It did have a few things that I didn't like about the controls. It had situations where I started out using the motion controls and everything worked perfectly fine except for when you were having to aim the gun. Sometimes when you had to aim the gun, you didn't quite make it there, or you didn't get your wrist around enough. They were trying really hard to get that motion control to work, and you could tell, but actually got somebody killed by accident using the motion controls, and it kind of ruined my experience a little bit. Overall, the motion controls were good. I just feel they should have stuck with more of the conventional controls for the gun scenes, and that's it, no motion controls at all. I ended up switching back to the normal controls only because of that, and I wanted to have a good playthrough. They had a bunch of QuickTime events also that came into play. You didn't know when they were going to come into play, so you consistently had to keep the controller in your hand, because if you didn't, you set the controller down, you didn't get the button press in time. If you weren't paying attention, a lot of times I was sucked into the story, and then all of a sudden, there's a QuickTime event, I gotta press a button, and I'd miss the button, and I'd have to either restart or a character would die. I think on some of the QuickTime events, they could have slowed it down a little bit. Some of it was really quick. I mean, you really had to be paying attention to what was going on, or you would make a mistake. Throwing in those really fast-paced QuickTime events make it a little hard to watch the story and watch the QuickTime events. They had a bunch of collectibles in this game, ranging from different pictures and clues to totems that helped you along your way and what decisions you would make within the game. I think there was 3 different collectibles and then the totems on top of that. So there was a bunch of stuff that you had to watch out for, which did increase gameplay time. However, it didn't increase it enough for me, but I'll get into that in a minute. But there was collectibles, there was other things you could do in the game without just playing through a linear story and having it be the end. It gave a little bit more value to the game. I would say that my review of the game as a critic would have to be a 7.5. The reason why I'm giving it a 7.5 and not an 8 or an 8.5 is because I was satisfied with the game, but I wasn't completely satisfied. And that brings in my personal note. I'm not going to be adding this one into my collection because we're going to go into the price. The price of the game was $60. $60 for me is kind of a high price to pay when you can get a game like Telltale's Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, or there's a few other games out there right now that you could buy that's going to be somewhere between $40 and $50. And you're still going to get that same great story without having to pay a super high price point. Why Sony decided $60 was a good idea, I don't know. It was a good game, don't get me wrong, that doesn't kill it for me at all. However, $60, I really can't get behind that. The second thing was the time of play. I picked up the game Tuesday on release day. I finished it by Friday. It totaled me all of about 6 hours. I missed a couple collectibles and I had to go back and play it again. So if you include that, it's probably about 8 hours for me to do it. I can't get behind that. I have a few biases about things. I can't condone a shorter game for a high price point if it doesn't have DLC coming with it or something more to add on. Because of those things, even though yes, the game is worth the buy, I would wait until the price point comes down. Personally, if I wasn't going to review it, I would have waited until the price point came down to $40 or $50. On my personal side, I'm only giving this game a 6.5. And I'm only giving it a 6.5 because all of these things combined, the price point, it doesn't make it a full experience. It's not like having a multiplayer in a full game. You play through once, maybe twice, and then you're done. I don't know if a lot of people are going to add this into their collection themselves, but it is a game worth playing. You will feel fulfilled about the time spent playing it. However, I'm assuming you will have your own ideas about the game. I thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you all on our next review.
Hello fellow gamers, it's your boy Zero Wink, and it's my turn to give my perspective on the game Until Dawn. Now Supermassive Games finally get their chance to make a AAA title exclusively for the PlayStation 4. After they've made smaller titles like Little Big Planet Vita, or what is that, Wonder Book, Walking with Dinosaurs, I believe. They've they've done a lot of little projects, but nothing really to this scope, and nothing really to this level. Now, Until Dawn actually covers the story of 8 friends who return to a cabin in the woods after their 2 best friends are presumed dead a year earlier. They decide to return to the cabin and say, we gotta put the past behind us, we got to get through this tragedy, all of us together, we gotta relive it one night just to get over the tragedy that befell them. Now, in the process of all this, it's your job as the player to allow them to make it through the night alive. They end up running into a lot of problems in the night. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but there are a lot of different problems that they run into. That's the entire game. So with that comes storyline. Now first I want to talk about how this storyline just grips you from start to finish. It makes you want to progress through the game. It makes you want to see what happens, but it's more of a narrative than an actual storyline. However, there is backstory on everything that's going on, which I thought adds a lot to the storyline, but there's also an ending that really, I don't know how to put it. It doesn't have the impact that it should for this type of horror game. There was really no interactions with the characters after they go through this tragic event, and I think that really hurts the ending a little bit. But the way they did the ending does fit, and it does work. It's just, it wasn't as impactful as the rest of the game, with the narrative and the storyline being what it was. So for me, I had to give storyline an 8 out of 10. I believe the ending could have been better. I believe the narrative definitely keeps you going through the whole thing. It definitely could have improved, but an 8 out of 10 is a solid 8. It's an above average storyline. Now, as far as length is concerned, it's really based on how you play. I'm a gamer, so I try to get all the little collectibles and all the clues and everything that I can get, all the weapons and all the other things that are involved in this game. Yes, there are weapons, which we'll get into later, but it's one of those things where you try to get everything. It's gonna take you about 8 to 10 hours to complete the first run through. And then, of course, there's definitely replay value on the fact that you want to see different outcomes. You want to see different things that happen. You want to see what happens if you don't do the QuickTime events in this area. You want to see what happens if you missed that collectible. You want to see what happens if you change the story up. This adds a lot of replayability to it because you can play through it a couple of times and get the storylines of many different characters and get different storylines. So it does add replayability. Overall, you're probably going to spend about 20 hours on it if you decide to go back through it and you're a fan of 90s horror, or you want to get all the trophies. You are definitely going to spend about 16 to 20 hours to go through it twice. But if it's just one-time deal, it's going to take you about 8 hours and 30 minutes. If you rush through it, just going from point to point to point to point, which for some odd reason a lot of gamers like to do today, it'll last you about 6 hours. I'm going to give this around the same score that I gave Second Son way back when we first started doing reviews, and I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because it's decent, it's satisfying, the length of it, but it's not the longest game. Obviously. It's got a decent length on it. It's not as bad as, say, The Order or Rise Son of Rome, where it's like just over 5 hours if you rush through it. It'll definitely take you about 8 hours and 30 minutes. Content. I added in the bonus content because I believe everyone should watch it the way the game was made. But not only do you get the bonus content, you also got collectibles, like totems. I recommend everybody goes and picks those up because the totems really help you try to save everybody. They really help you try to get the storyline that you want. You have the death totem, you have the guidance totem, the danger totem, the fortune totem, and the loss totem. All these totems show different premonitions of the future, so they actually make the collectibles necessary. Clues that you can pick up. 1952, Mystery Man, and then there's another one, I forgot exactly what it was, but all these clues help you deal with what you're going to have to deal with inside the game. This is one of the first games I've seen where they actually make the collectibles necessary. You want to get the collectibles to see your premonitions of the future, to see what might be around the corner, to see how to deal with the situation that you're in, to see the history of the situation that you're in. They also have different shotguns that you can have in it. They have different action sequences where you actually use guns. So there's a lot of content there, but it's not like RPG content. You don't have the content where you can just equip things on your character and do stuff like you would be able to in Resident Evil with all the different guns and all the different suits and all the different things that you can do. So yes, there's a lot of collectibles. Yes, there's a lot of content, but it's also limited. So I'm going to give the content in Until Dawn 7 out of 10. That brings us to gameplay. The gameplay does leave something to be desired. You cannot run in the game, and I believe that's actually a good thing, because who's really going to be running when you don't know what's around the corner? It's realistic to think that these people aren't going to be so quick to run all the time, but they do have an action button that allows you to speed walk in L1, and that allows you to take some time off of the game if you desire to do that, but I recommend going around and getting all the collectibles, and this really brings a sense of atmosphere to it, which is why they didn't put that in. In terms of the controller settings, you have the move controller settings, you have the normal controller settings. Now, I started with normal control settings. Overall, it plays very well. You do, however, find yourself going around in circles from time to time, or, especially with the normal controls, your flashlight just flashes everywhere that you don't want it to flash. You can't get the flashlight where you want it to go in normal controls. This is the difference between move controls. Now, move controls, the flashlight works really, really well. It's the light beam. The little light on the controller is your light. Wherever you put it, that's where it flashes. And this is where move excels. However, where the move controls does not excel, shooting mechanics. There will be certain sequences where you have to shoot certain things. And with the move controller, it's really hard to get it to where you want it to shoot. For the shooting mechanics in the game, normal controls are better. For the more atmospheric mechanics in the game, the move controller is better. It's really a toss-up of how you want to play, but if you want to keep everybody alive, you're going to want to go with normal controls. The QTEs. I hear everyone talking about, oh, this game is full of QTEs, but they're QTEs that are done right. They are QTEs that you don't know when they're coming. There are QTEs that have a timer on them, so if you do not hit the button at the right time, or you do not hit it within the time limit, there are dire consequences to that. So therefore, it makes it more of a game. You can flat out kill a character, and sorry, he's gone for the rest of the game. She's gone for the rest of the game. Either you go back to the beginning, or you play through, and then you have to play through again. So there are dire consequences for not getting your QTEs exactly right. So it does add a sense of urgency. It adds a sense of, I gotta pay attention. It's not like a regular QTE fest, where you could take 10 years to do your QTE event, and it still wouldn't matter. There are no consequences to it. Do not think that this is a full QTE game of QTE events that really don't do anything for the game. They actually increase the urgency in the game and increase the difficulty of the game, which is rare because you normally don't see that with QTEs. With all of this, since the gameplay is a little bit slow, and the gameplay is a little bit latent, and the move control doesn't work quite right, and the normal controls don't work quite right, I'm going to give gameplay a solid 7 out of 10, because it doesn't take you out of the experience, but there are definitely improvements that could be made on the gameplay. That brings me to graphics. Now, graphics in this game, what can I say about the graphics in this game? The graphics in this game are beautiful. I think this is the best looking game I've seen on next-gen consoles. That even goes against Rise, Son of Rome. That even goes against the Order 1886. I think the Until Dawn in a lot of ways is better looking than a lot of these. In terms of the character models are probably the most detailed I've ever seen in any game up to this point. From the trees to the wrinkles in the clothes, just the detail they put into a lot of these characters, the house, the cabin, what they put into this game to get this game looking this way is actually quite astounding. Really. This is probably going to be one of the best looking games all generation. I'm going to give graphics a 10 out of 10. You really can't get better than what these graphics were in terms of just the detail, the way it looks, the lighting, everything that they put into it. Fun factor, was the game fun? The game was fun in its own way. There were times when it really slowed down and it really didn't have enough gumption to keep going, and sometimes you were like, oh man, I just wish something would happen. And of course at that time it would. They did a really good job with pacing, but at the same time, there wasn't as many amazing moments as a game like this probably could have had. There were some great moments, but it kind of lost its impact, especially when you're walking around for as long as I was looking for stuff and seeing all the nooks and crannies and looking at all the detail. It was fun. I got a lot of jump scares, and there was a lot of times where I was out there, I don't want to know what's over there, I don't want to know. But I do believe there's room to improve on the amount of fun, but as with any game, not everything's gonna be perfect. So in terms of fun factor, I'm gonna give fun factor a 7 out of 10. It's not like you're constantly hacking and slashing, you're constantly doing stuff all the time, you're constantly moving quick, which is decent, not bad. And that brings me to atmosphere and sound. stunning. There's really nothing bad you can say about that atmosphere and sound. It was an original composition. I forgot who the composer is. He definitely got it. He definitely knew what the developers wanted in terms of getting people to get those moments where you're wondering what's around the corner. Right when you think things are getting there, you'll hear that music, and it'll be like, oh man, what's about to happen? You immediately start looking around when the music kicks in. The atmosphere is perfect. Voice acting is spot on. I believe there are a couple characters that could have had better actors, but even at that, they were still spot on. You don't really feel like these aren't real characters. You don't really feel like you're not invested in this story. So I believe sound and atmosphere gets a 10 out of 10, perfect 10 out of 10. This is a great soundtrack, right up there with Alien Isolation in terms of fear and making you feel that sense of urgency. And that actually brings us to our final score. I do not grade stuff that's not in the game. Now, multiplayer was never supposed to be in the game, so I'm not going to knock points off for something that they didn't put in the game. I'm not going to knock points off for anything that I believe should personally be put in the game. So this comes to the final score of a 56 out of 70, which gives you a solid above average 8 out of 10. It's one of those games that you definitely should have in your collection. If you want to wait for the price to go down, by all means, you're free to do so. If you don't, you're not going to feel unsatisfied by spending the 60 bucks. You can either wait for it to go down or you cannot, but either way, you're going to walk away satisfied. This is definitely a company that put everything they had into this game. They did a great job. It had so much from a studio that really wasn't doing these types of games before. This game just has so much to it and so much depth. This has been Zero. Keep gaming, gamers. And I will see all of you guys and gals next time.